Okay, the learner. So you've given us this awesome stack of stuff to go through. Today, we're going to try to make sense of it all, pick out the really good bits, and give you some practical takeaways that you can put to use right away without getting totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, kind of like connecting the dots between being a high-performing athlete, getting the best sleep, how to train and eat smart, and even how to use your emotions to your advantage.
Think of it as a crash course in all these interconnected topics. We've got Charles Staley's The Unnatural Athlete, some solid advice on training principles, injury prevention, and nutrition, plus insights into mental toughness from guys like Ed O'Keefe and Jeff Smith. We've even got some practical tips from fitness professionals like Alwyn and Rachel Cosgrove and soft tissue therapist Simone Formby. Let's dive right in. Starting with this concept of the unnatural athlete from Staley, what exactly does that mean?
Well, what I find interesting is that it suggests this deliberate choice to push past natural limits through focused training and a different way of thinking about performance.
So it's not about ignoring your natural abilities, more like strategically going beyond where you think you can go.
Exactly. It's a calculated approach rather than just relying on raw effort or talent.
Right. So it's not just about punishing yourself in the gym. One example that really stuck with me was judging a workout based on the results you actually see, not just how much you suffered through it. That seems different from how a lot of us might think, where we connect effort and pain with progress.
You're right. The natural inclination might be to equate a hard workout with a good workout, but the unnatural perspective focuses on tangible improvements. Are you actually getting stronger, faster, or more flexible? Those are the real indicators of success.
It's about results, not just the struggle.
Absolutely.
And this unnatural approach extends to how you recover, too, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about collapsing on the couch after a tough workout.
Definitely. It's about actively using strategies to help your body bounce back faster. Think ice baths, compression, active recovery sessions, and even things like proper nutrition and getting enough sleep. It's about being proactive in your recovery.
Helping your body repair and rebuild faster.
Exactly.
Now, the idea of breaking bad habits also seems connected to this unnatural mindset. It's not just about constantly denying yourself, but something deeper.
The sources we looked at suggested that highly disciplined people, they're not just good at saying no, they've learned to recognize the negative consequences of those bad habits, and they know those consequences outweigh any short-term pleasure they might get.
So it's not just willpower, it's understanding the trade-offs.
Yeah, and being aware of your actions and making choices based on that awareness. It's a deliberate process.
Okay, so it's all about deliberate actions and a more calculated approach. Now let's get into some of the essential principles for effective training that came up. Specificity was a big one. Can you explain that a little more?
Basically, the principle of specificity means your training should be tailored to the specific activity you're trying to improve.
Like that great example we saw, dynamic stretching for high kicks versus heavy lifting with low reps to increase your 1-rep max. It seems obvious when you say it like that, but it's easy to miss those connections.
Right. You wouldn't train for a marathon by just doing sprints. And you wouldn't try to build maximum strength just by doing tons of reps with light weights. Your body adapts very specifically to the type of stress you put on it.
So match your training to your goals.
Absolutely.
Another key principle that came up was having clear objectives and the distinction between having a training program versus just exercising.
Right. A true training program has a specific outcome you're aiming for and a clear end date. Exercise is more general, good for overall health, but a program gives you direction. And the formula they gave, success equals met expectations, that's powerful.
So before you even start, you need to know exactly what you want to achieve and by when.
Right. Otherwise, it's easy to lose motivation and feel like you're not making progress, even if you're putting in the work. That question, am I training with a specific goal and deadline in mind, can be really helpful to stay focused.
I like that. Now, while we're on the topic of training, weightlifting safety is a big deal. What were some of those common sense safety tips that stood out to you?
A few are really crucial. Never train alone, especially with heavy weights. A spotter can literally save you from serious injury. Also, if you're new to lifting, get some expert guidance. A good coach can teach you proper form, which is vital for both results and safety.
And the point about not lifting heavier than what's programmed in your plan. Leaving those couple of reps in the tank goes against the old school idea of pushing to failure every set.
Yeah, research suggests that you don't need to go to complete muscle failure to make progress, and consistently doing so just increases your injury risk. Leaving a little in reserve allows for more consistent and safer training over the long term.
It's about training smarter, not just harder.
Exactly. And one more thing, it's best to avoid heavy lifting right before you need to perform any skill-based activity. Fatigue can really mess with your coordination and technique.
Makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay, let's switch gears to something we all need: sleep. The material had some practical advice on getting better shut-eye. Tracking your sleepiness throughout the day was the first step.
Right, and the idea is to use a scale, maybe 1 to 10, to rate your alertness at different points during the day. It can help you identify when your energy naturally dips and if you're carrying any sleep debt.
And then actually measuring your sleep debt by seeing how quickly you fall asleep during the day. That's a pretty direct way to know if you're getting enough rest.
It is. If you constantly find yourself nodding off during the day, it's a pretty good indicator that you're not getting enough sleep at night.
If you're passing out in the middle of a meeting, you probably need more sleep.
Probably. And if your sleepiness level during the day is consistent, then you are likely getting the right amount.
Okay, that makes sense. And the advice to really prioritize your sleep schedule, even if it means missing out on some things in the evening, that's tough for a lot of people, but it highlights how important sleep really is.
It does. It often means making some hard choices. Social events and late nights can eat into your sleep time, but thinking of sleep as essential for your health and performance can help you make those choices.
So treat sleep like an appointment you can't miss.
Exactly.
And a couple of quick tips for actually falling asleep. Avoid caffeine in the evening, which makes sense given its long half-life, and trying some mental exercises like counting backwards by sevens.
Those can be surprisingly helpful. It's all about quieting your mind and interrupting that mental chatter that keeps us awake. Repetitive mental tasks can shift your focus and help you relax.
Okay, for those who like to test their physical limits, the Max Jones Quadrathlon sounds like a fun way to track your progress in speed and power.
The MJQ is great because it's accessible, just a tape measure and a stopwatch. You're basically testing yourself in 4 different movements that combine speed and power. But it's important to build up to it gradually, especially if you haven't been doing sprints and jumps regularly. Don't just jump in cold.
One of the events, the 16-pound overhead shot, the technique sounds intense. You're on a shot put board, swinging this weight between your legs, then throwing it backwards over your head.
Yeah, it's a dynamic movement, almost like winding up for a powerful jump, then exploding upwards and releasing the shot behind you. The further you throw it, the better.
Sounds challenging. Now, moving on to potential performance aids, we saw some information on acetyl L-carnitine, or ALC. The studies mentioned were all on animals.
Right. The research suggested that ALC might boost testosterone in male rats and possibly counteract the testosterone drop that's often seen with overtraining. Interesting findings, but we can't just assume those results directly translate to humans.
We also heard a personal anecdote about someone using 2 grams a day for a month, split between morning and pre-workout doses. The suggestion was to monitor free testosterone levels and adjust accordingly.
It's a real-world example, but everyone's different. The advice to monitor testosterone and adjust the dose based on mental clarity and any side effects really highlights the importance of personalization and listening to your body.
No one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly.
Let's talk about shoulders. The material explained those rotator cuff muscles and the problems that can happen.
The rotator cuff is a group of tendons that are really important for shoulder stability. Tears in these tendons, especially the supraspinatus, can happen from injury or just wear and tear over time. Symptoms are usually pain and weakness, especially when lifting your arm overhead. You might even have pain at night.
And recovery after surgery sounds like a long process. First, letting it heal, then starting careful movement to avoid stiffness, and finally, rebuilding strength.
It's a gradual process. Giving those tendons enough time to heal is crucial, followed by controlled exercises to regain range of motion, then strengthening exercises to restore function and protect the shoulder.
So patience is key.
Definitely.
Rotator cuff tendonitis and bursitis, also known as impingement syndrome, they were explained as irritation of the tendons and the bursa from pressure in the joint.
Basically, those tendons get pinched between the bones in your shoulder when you lift your arm, causing pain and inflammation.
Ouch. Now, let's shift to something relevant for most of us who spend a lot of time sitting, which is setting up your workspace properly. The material emphasized minimizing sitting time and having a well-designed workstation.
Right. If you have to sit for work, an adjustable chair is key. You want good lumbar support to maintain that natural curve in your spine, armrests, and the ability to lean back a little, maybe to around 120 degrees. A wide enough seat so your knees aren't squeezed together is also important. Adjustability is crucial because everyone's body is different.
It's about making your workspace work for you.
Exactly.
We heard from someone who called themselves a reformed highter. They used to do high-intensity training, those short, twice-a-week workouts where you push yourself to failure, but weren't seeing great results.
This story shows that not every training method works the same for everyone. While HIT can be effective for some, this person found a different approach worked better for them.
And the change involved multiple sets, lower reps, and stopping short of failure. They mentioned being influenced by the ideas of Charles Staley and Pavel Tsatsouline.
So a shift towards heavier weights, more sets, and enough rest between sets to maintain good form rather than pushing to the limit in a single set.
Makes sense. We also heard from fitness professional Rachel Cosgrove, who owns a gym and trains all sorts of clients. Her typical day sounds pretty intense, starting super early.
It really gives you a sense of the demands of owning and running a gym and the variety of client work involved.
Her credentials are impressive too. A bachelor's in exercise physiology, the NSCA CSCS certification, and she's even working on a master's in dietetics and nutrition. It really emphasizes the importance of constant learning in the fitness field.
Absolutely. New research and techniques are emerging all the time. Staying up to date through education is crucial for anyone who wants to provide safe and effective guidance.
And her advice for women in the field: be knowledgeable, confident, and don't feel the need to constantly prove yourself. And her insights into the common training mistakes she sees in women.
She mentioned the fear of lifting heavy weights, thinking it'll make them bulky, and overemphasizing cardio at the expense of strength training. She stressed that lifting heavier weights is actually key for women to get lean and strong.
So ladies, don't be afraid to lift heavy.
Exactly.
Her overall advice: enjoy what you do, take chances, and set goals in all areas of your life. That's good advice for everyone, no matter what they do.
It's about finding your passion, being open to new things, and taking a holistic approach to personal growth.
Now let's talk about Ed O'Keefe's ideas about developing a winning mind, using what he calls emotional anchors. The first step is being aware of and stopping that negative self-talk.
Absolutely. It's all about recognizing and challenging that inner voice that tells you you can't do it or you're not good enough. Silencing that voice is crucial for building a more positive and powerful mindset.
And then learning to create those anchors to help you consistently access those peak performance states. What exactly are these anchors?
Think of it as a trigger, a word, a gesture, or even a song that you associate with a particular emotion like confidence or motivation. By intentionally creating these anchors, you can then use that trigger to evoke those feelings whenever you need them.
So like training your brain to feel a certain way on command?
You could say that?
You mentioned examples like automatically finishing familiar song lyrics or sayings. We already have unconscious anchors affecting our focus and emotions.
Right, we do. The goal is to become aware of those anchors and to create new ones that serve you, especially in competitive situations.
So you can consciously shift away from draining emotions like worry and anxiety and redirect that energy towards focus, courage, and confidence.
Precisely. It's about being in control of your emotional state because it directly affects your performance.
He said even a bit of nervousness can be good, but you need to quickly transition to a feeling of power and confidence. He said everything counts when it comes to mastering your emotions.
Every thought, every feeling, it all matters. You need to be proactive in managing your emotional state, not letting it control you.
And the idea of creating anchors for success, it's about training your mind to automatically respond in a positive way, seeing mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow.
You learn from your mistakes, but then you let them go. You extract the lesson and move on. Dwelling on past errors can actually make you more likely to repeat them.
So instead of beating yourself up, you use those mistakes to improve.
Exactly. It's about reinforcing those positive emotional states, even when things are going well, to strengthen your mental resilience.
Now, let's talk about Scott Mendelson's thoughts on the importance of prioritizing training and nutrition before even thinking about supplements. He had that great analogy of paying off your debt before investing in the stock market.
Right. He's emphasizing that supplements can play a role, but they're most effective when you have that solid base of consistent and proper training and nutrition.
So build a foundation first.
Exactly.
He also talked about how we often look for quick fixes, like supplements, instead of putting in the harder work of creating a good plan.
It's tempting to look for those easy solutions, those magic pills, but ultimately you need to put in the work. Research, planning, patience, that's what leads to real results.
Now, when it comes to understanding VO2 max and aerobic performance, it's interesting that elite athletes tend to have a higher VO2 max, But that's not the only thing that determines their success.
Right. While VO2 max, which is a measure of how well your body uses oxygen, is generally higher in top endurance athletes, what really sets the very best apart is their ability to maintain a high percentage of their VO2 max for a long time, what's called Tmax, and at a fast pace, Vmax.
So it's not just about how big your engine is, but how efficiently you can run that engine for a sustained period at a high level.
Exactly.
And he mentioned a practical application involving testing Vmax and Tmax on a treadmill to design more effective interval workouts.
So you figure out the athlete's Vmax, their fastest sustainable speed, and their Tmax, how long they can hold that speed, and then you create workouts that have them training near those levels.
Okay, so personalized training plans based on actual data.
Precisely.
Now, the importance of your self-image based on that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, that was a really thought-provoking concept. The idea is that your self-image acts like a control system for your life. Your actions and abilities tend to line up with how you see yourself.
So the way you see yourself, your self-image, it actually sets the limits for what you believe you can achieve. If you don't see yourself as someone who can squat a certain weight, for example, you're probably not going to be able to do it.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. And that's why just relying on willpower alone to make changes often doesn't work. You need to change your self-image first.
So if you want to achieve something, you need to start by seeing yourself as the kind of person who can achieve it.
Right. Visualize yourself achieving that goal.
Yeah.
See yourself with that physique, with that mindset, living that kind of lifestyle.
And that's where the act as if principle comes in.
Exactly. Start behaving as if you're already that person. Adopt the habits, the routines, the way of thinking of that person you want to become.
Fake it till you make it, kinda.
You could say that. If you can't see it, you won't achieve it.
I like that. He also gave that example of adopting a new professional identity, like becoming an accountant. Once you see yourself in that role, the tasks associated with it start to feel more natural.
It's about aligning your actions with your desired self-image.
Okay, so self-image is a powerful thing. Now, when it comes to dealing with a training injury, like one in the hamstring area, the first piece of advice was to see a qualified sports medicine doctor.
Get a proper diagnosis. Understand what's going on before doing anything else.
And for initial self-care, ice, gentle pain-free movements, but avoid any aggressive stretching or activities that cause pain.
Listen to your body. Don't push through pain. Let the injury heal properly before returning to activity, and do it gradually under the guidance of your doctor or physical therapist.
Now let's talk about some of those practical self-defense tips. The first one was to always be aware of your surroundings and avoid turning your back on a potential threat.
Situational awareness is crucial. Be aware of what's happening around you and try to position yourself in a way that minimizes your vulnerability.
Don't be caught off guard.
Right.
If someone grabs you, try to relax. Don't give them a solid base to work with. And if you need to strike back, move into your strike for more power.
Relaxing makes it harder for an attacker to control you. Moving into a strike adds your body weight and momentum, increasing the force.
So use your whole body.
Exactly.
And avoid high kicks. They're slower and easier to block. Focus on lower targets first.
Like the knee. A solid strike to the knee can disable an attacker and create an opening for a follow-up strike.
And the strong caution against headbutting. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
You risk injuring yourself more than your attacker. Headbutting can compromise your vision, leaving you vulnerable.
Jeff Smith had this interesting idea of major outcome activities, or MOAs, basically highlighting that not all tasks are created equal.
He's saying, focus on the activities that produce the biggest results, the ones that move you closer to your goals.
So it's about figuring out those high-leverage activities and prioritizing them.
Exactly. Identify those MOAs, whether they're related to your business, fitness, or any other area of your life, and make them your focus.
Even small, consistent shifts towards those MOAs can add up to huge gains over time. He had that example of a $100 an hour MOA replacing just 1 hour of a less valuable activity each day, adding up to $25,000 a year.
It's about compounding those small wins over time.
It's powerful when you think about it that way.
It is.
We heard about manual reintegration therapy from Simone Formby. It's a very personalized, hands-on approach to treating soft tissue problems.
She described it as being result-oriented, using a blend of techniques tailored to the individual needs and goals of the person she's working with.
She talked about listening to the tissues and helping the body release trauma by replicating the movements that caused the injury. That seems very intuitive.
It's a very holistic approach, understanding how the body holds on to those physical memories and helping it let go through specific guided movements.
She did caution against strength coaches performing those types of specialized soft tissue treatments.
She acknowledged that some basic tension release work might be okay, but the more complex stuff, that requires specific training and a lot of experience. She believes collaboration between strength coaches and soft tissue therapists is ideal.
So working together to provide comprehensive care for the client.
Exactly.
Now, when it comes to designing workouts to build muscle hypertrophy, the key seems to be maximizing the amount of work you do in a certain amount of time at a challenging intensity and making sure you can recover.
It's about the total volume of work, the intensity, and your ability to recover. All of those play a role in muscle growth.
And achieving mastery in training or in life is a journey, not a destination. You have to be okay with not knowing everything.
It's a constant process of learning, adapting, and growing. Never stop being curious.
Even the perfect workout will eventually become less effective. And those cookie-cutter plans in magazines, they might not be ideal for everyone. The advice was to stick with what works and doesn't hurt, but stay open to learning new things and don't get stuck overthinking things.
Avoid paralysis by analysis. Sometimes you just need to take action. And remember, those magazines need to sell copies. They often overemphasize novelty and new trends to keep things interesting.
So don't get distracted by the shiny new thing. Stick with the fundamentals.
Exactly.
And we heard a few more self-defense tips reinforcing the idea of moving into your strikes and aiming low.
Targeting the knees or groin can be much more effective than those fancy high kicks you see in movies.
And they emphasize the importance of consistent practice.
Practice those techniques regularly. Make those movements automatic so you can react effectively in a real-life situation.
And for anyone focused on physique goals, the importance of those little dietary slip-ups, they can add up.
Those seemingly minor indulgences, they can sabotage your progress if you're not careful. Consistency is key.
We talked about key projects, which is a more focused way to think about those MOAs. The idea is to identify the 1 or 2 high-impact activities within a project, your MOAs, that you should personally handle, and delegate the rest.
So figure out which projects offer the biggest return on investment, and then focus your energy on those specific activities within the project that are most valuable.
And he gave a system for doing this, starting with listing all your potential projects and estimating their profit.
Then picking your top 3, listing all the activities involved in those projects, and estimating their value per hour. Identify your highest value MOAs and delegate the rest.
It's about strategic delegation.
Exactly.
Now, those nagging chronic injuries, the kind that don't hurt until you start lifting, they can be frustrating. A 5-step approach to address those was presented.
It was comprehensive. See a doctor to rule out anything serious, get massage therapy to address muscle imbalances, warm up properly, cool down after training, and focus on good technique with gradual progression.
Sounds like a good plan. Now, let's talk about effective goal setting. What were those 6 key elements again?
Write them down, make them specific and measurable, realistic and believable, set a deadline that's challenging but attainable, and frame them positively.
So instead of, I won't eat junk food, it's, I'll choose healthy snacks.
Exactly. It's about focusing on what you will do, not what you won't do.
And those goals should be about things you can control, not outcomes that depend on other people.
So focus on your training, your nutrition, your effort, not on winning a competition, which is influenced by factors outside your control.
And the point about knowing when to stop an exercise, specifically when the quality of your movement deteriorates, continuing those low-quality reps can be counterproductive.
It's about training smart. Pushing through when your form is breaking down, that just increases your risk of injury and reduces the effectiveness of the exercise.
And we all have that one weak link, that limiting factor that's holding us back.
Identifying and addressing that weakness can lead to rapid improvements. It's about focusing on that one thing that's having the biggest impact on your progress.
Now, there is no best way is a good reminder. No single perfect food, no single perfect way to train.
It's about finding what works for you, recognizing that everyone is different, and being willing to adapt and adjust your approach over time.
Because what works today might not work forever.
Absolutely.
And that idea of turning injuries into opportunities.
Use that downtime to address other areas you might be neglecting. Rehab your injury properly, but also use that time to work on your weaknesses, improve your mobility, and build a more balanced physique.
So you come back even stronger.
Exactly.
Some of those key training principles were about the importance of comprehensive preparation, the quality of your training over just the quantity, and the idea that the amount of time you spend isn't as important as how you spend that time.
The Ben Johnson example was a good illustration. He had a very focused training schedule that maximized efficiency.
Quality over quantity.
Exactly. And another important point was that we never have all the answers. Thinking you do can actually stop you from learning. It's about staying humble and curious. And the idea that passion, not just discipline, fuels mastery. That phrase, love it like your first girlfriend, it's about having that fire, that drive that comes from genuine love for what you're doing. That's what sustains you through the tough times.
Makes sense. Now, we touched on how those standard EDT protocols, those escalating density training protocols, might not be ideal for building speed strength.
EDT is a very versatile training system. It can be adapted to achieve different goals, but for speed strength, you need a modified approach.
Like that cycling example, where you'd start by comparing your current performance to your goal time.
Right. You'd need to adjust the exercises and the intensity to match the demands of your sport and your specific goals.
And a couple of quick tips. For those auxiliary exercises, those extra exercises, it's good to pair those that work opposite muscle groups.
Antagonistic pairings. It can help with recovery.
And for those speed training days, instead of multiple sets of 2-3 reps, consider more sets of just 1 rep.
The goal is to develop that ability to go all out on that first rep.
Because that's what counts in competition.
Exactly.
Now, we also got that detailed breakdown of proper bench press technique, covering everything from hand placement to leg drive. It's all about consistent practice to make those steps automatic.
Mastering the bench press, or any lift, requires paying attention to all those details. It's about developing that mind-muscle connection and making those movements second nature, even under pressure.
Practice, practice, practice.
Absolutely.
And we talked about assistance exercises in powerlifting, those exercises that help you improve your main lifts. The cambered bar bench press was mentioned, but it's important to use it cautiously.
And adjust your assistance work based on your training level and the demands of your sport. Beginners usually don't need to get fancy. Focus on those main lifts.
Keep it simple. Now, that history of triathlon nutrition, especially those early Ironman races, it was fascinating to hear about the challenges they faced with trying to fuel those extreme events.
The body can only handle so much at once. It was a lot of trial and error, learning how to eat and drink enough to support those levels of exertion.
And that core philosophy of the unnatural athlete, doing everything right, maximizing your efforts, it resonated.
It's about being smart, efficient, and strategic in everything you do.
And the idea that being inexperienced can be a gift, that newcomers can be more open to logic and less burdened by those old myths.
It's an interesting perspective. Sometimes not knowing too much can be an advantage.
Convergent phase training, CPT, that's a 3-day-a-week program that balances consistency and variety.
Yeah, it's a system that seems to work well for a lot of people.
We also heard from speed coach Boo Schexnayder, who emphasized that everyone can be faster, and it's all about focusing on quality of movement, not just intensity.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
He talked about neurobiomechanical cues for good sprinting form, like dorsiflexing your foot before toe-off, and a bunch of drills to help improve running mechanics.
It's fascinating how those little details can make a big difference in speed and efficiency.
We discussed identifying those big rocks, your most important personal goals, and the idea that those should drive your business goals, not the other way around.
Those are the things that matter most, the experiences that make life truly rich and fulfilling.
Family, travel, those special moments.
Exactly.
Now, for weight loss, give yourself enough time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And manage those carbs strategically. Eat them when they're most beneficial. And that metabolic diet, eating the minimum carbs you need for health and function, that's interesting.
It's all about finding what works best for your body.
Track your progress. Just like a business wouldn't operate without a plan and tracking their numbers, your fitness journey needs that same level of intention. Set goals, make a plan, measure your results, and keep a log. It keeps you accountable and motivated.
Exactly. It's about taking a structured, data-driven approach.
Understanding training transfer is about choosing exercises that actually help you improve in your sport or activity, the kind of improvement that just playing the sport itself can't provide.
So, choosing those supplemental exercises that have the most positive transfer to your main activity.
Creatine monohydrate is a good supplement, but there are a lot of misconceptions out there. It doesn't cause cramping, and creatine serum isn't effective. Take it after your workout with a carb protein drink.
That's a good strategy to maximize absorption and get the most benefit.
Now, spinal health during exercise. Maintain that neutral spine, avoid twisting or bending, And be mindful of how you pick up weights from low racks.
It's all about protecting your back and preventing injury.
And when it comes to back pain, nerve irritation can cause those radiating symptoms down your leg. If you have numbness, tingling, or weakness, see a doctor.
Those are red flags that shouldn't be ignored.
Scheduling your workouts and your meals can really help you stay consistent, especially when you're stressed or tired.
A schedule helps you stay focused and eliminates those in-the-moment decisions that can derail your progress.
We talked about EDT, 3 15-minute PR zones, 2 exercises per zone, working opposite muscle groups.
It's a really efficient and effective way to train.
The importance urgency matrix was a great way to prioritize tasks, separating the important and urgent from the less important and less urgent.
It's a great tool for time management.
Don't underestimate the power of simple training splits.
Sometimes the simplest approaches are the most effective.
We went over some basic nutrition guidelines, like aiming for 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, getting 20–35% of your calories from fat, and the rest from carbs.
The Mediterranean diet is a great example of a well-balanced and sustainable eating plan.
And remember that danger is relative in training. Err on the side of caution, listen to your body, and progress gradually.
It's always better to be safe than